At 8:23, the house was almost quiet. Not fully. Not yet. Below the balcony, the city still carried itself along in pieces, a car passing too fast, a voice rising from the sidewalk, the low pull of traffic beyond the block. Inside, the rooms were beginning to settle around him, one small sound at a time. He had come home from the shop with the day still on his hands. There was no one asking about the register, the delivery, the customer who needed something changed at the last minute. No one asking him to translate himself into easier words. Everyone had gone to bed, or was close enough to sleep that the house felt borrowed for a little while. On the kitchen counter, in a soft rectangle of light, a folded blanket waited. Nothing special. Just fabric. Just something that had been used, warmed, left, and brought back into order slowly. Across the room, the light settled on an old piece of furniture, making its worn edges look gentler than they did in the day. He stood there and watched. Then, with tired hands, he smoothed one fold of the blanket. That was all. The fold did not become perfect. It only lay flatter beneath his palm, the way some things become a little quieter when they are touched without hurry. He did not press hard. He did not shake the blanket open and start again. He only moved his hand across the fabric once, from the thicker edge toward the middle, and let his fingers stop there. The counter held the kind of light that made ordinary things seem allowed to rest. A glass near the sink. A receipt curled at one corner. The small dark line where the counter met the wall. Nothing had been arranged for beauty. Nothing was waiting to be admired. The kitchen had simply kept going after the day ended, holding whatever people left there because they were tired. He knew that kind of holding. At the shop, he held numbers in his head while answering questions in another language. He held the tone of his voice steady when someone spoke too quickly, or too loudly, or treated his carefulness like delay. He held his back straight while lifting boxes from the stockroom. He held the day open for customers who came in wanting one small thing and brought the weather of their own lives with them. Sometimes, by closing time, he could feel every hour sitting behind his eyes. Still, he locked the door. He checked the register. He turned the sign around. He made sure the sidewalk display was pulled in so no one would take it in the night. He did the small things that never looked like much from the outside. Then he came home. Not dramatically. Not as someone returning from a story. Just as a man with tired feet, a house key, and the faint smell of cardboard and dust still clinging to his shirt. The balcony door was cracked open a little. City sound slipped in around the frame. It did not enter the house all at once. It arrived in pieces, soft enough now to become background, tires over a seam in the street, a laugh from somewhere below, the far-off hush of a bus slowing at the corner. Inside, the house answered with its own small noises. A pipe clicked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere deeper in the rooms, wood shifted in the walls as if the house were lowering its shoulders. He stood between these two kinds of sound, not fully outside and not fully inside. Work was behind him, but not gone. Home was around him, but he had not yet entered it with his whole body. That middle place was familiar. There were years when he had lived there, between names, between accents, between the person he was before opening the shop and the person people expected when they saw him behind the counter. Even at home, some part of him kept translating. Not words exactly. More like the shape of himself. How much to say? How little to say? When to smile? When to let a misunderstanding pass because the day was already long? But the blanket did not need any of that. It did not ask where he had come from. It did not ask whether he had been patient enough, clear enough, grateful enough, successful enough. It waited in the light with its one uneven fold, and when his hand passed over it, the fabric gave way without argument. For a few seconds, he could stop being understood. He looked again toward the old piece of furniture across the room. In daylight, it was scratched near one leg and dull along the top, the kind of thing that might have been replaced if life had been easier or if money had ever arrived without a job already attached to it. But at this hour, with the light resting across it, the scratches did not disappear. They only became less sharp. That was enough for the room. Maybe it was enough for him too, for this small part of the evening. Not to be new. Not to be explained. Only to stand there, with tired hands near folded fabric, while the house made room for the day to leave slowly. The kitchen counter had collected the evidence of other people's leaving. A spoon with a dull line of sauce near the handle. A school paper turned face down. A rubber band that had lost its shape. Someone's half-empty cup near the edge, close enough that he noticed it without moving it. He did not begin cleaning right away. There were nights when he came in and went straight from one responsibility into another, as if the shop door and the front door were only two sides of the same hinge. He would rinse plates, wipe crumbs, check the stove, lower the thermostat, glance at his phone, and answer one message he did not have the energy to answer. But tonight, the folded blanket held him still. It was not that the blanket was important in any large way. It had no story that anyone would stop to tell. It had been pulled over someone's knees while they watched television. It had slipped halfway to the floor. Later, maybe one of the children had brought it to the kitchen chair and forgotten it there. Then someone, maybe him, maybe not, had folded it quickly and left it on the counter. Now the fold was his only task. That felt strange at first. He was used to tasks that led to other tasks. Pay the invoice, and another bill waited. Restock one shelf, and another shelf looked bare. Call one supplier, and another message came in. At home, too, one small chore often opened into the next. The dishwasher had to be unloaded before plates could go in. The trash had to be tied before the kitchen smelled like the day before. Lunch containers had to be washed before morning made everyone rush. Life had a way of making even rest feel like a narrow space between two duties. But this fold did not open into anything. He ran his thumb along the seam and felt the fabric bunch softly, then loosen. The blanket was slightly worn near one corner, the threads rubbed thinner where hands often reached for it. That small worn place touched something in him without asking to be named. Not sadness exactly. Not pride either. More like the quiet relief of finding that something used could still be useful. Outside, a siren rose for a moment and then passed farther down the avenue. The sound thinned as it went, leaving the apartment in a softer pocket of quiet. He listened to it fade, and for once he did not follow it in his mind. He did not wonder who needed help, or whether traffic would block the next street, or whether tomorrow's delivery would arrive late because of roadwork near the bridge. He stayed with the counter. With the fabric. With the old furniture across the room, holding its line of light. In the shop, he often felt watched in a way he could not explain without sounding ungrateful. Watched for how he spoke, how he counted change, how quickly he understood, how many times he asked someone to repeat a word. Watched by customers who were kind, and by customers who were not. Watched by his own memory of arriving with less language than hunger, less certainty than hope. At home, no one was watching him now. That was its own kind of mercy. He did not have to become larger than he was. He did not have to make the day sound better or worse. He did not have to turn the tiredness into a story of sacrifice. The room did not need a speech from him. The blanket waited under his hand. The city kept moving below. And somewhere in the house, behind a closed door, someone turned in sleep and settled again. He let his shoulders drop a little. Not all the way. Maybe they had forgotten how. But a little. Sometimes a person does not know how much of the day they have been carrying until there is no one left to hand it to. So the day stays there for a while, in the hands, in the wrists, in the back of the neck, in the small pause before the next thing begins. He touched the fold once more, lighter this time, as if the blanket were not a chore but a place to set down the part of him that had been explaining all day. By the time the house became quieter, he could hear smaller things. Not silence. Silence almost never came all the way, not in this building, not in this part of the city. There was always an elevator door somewhere, a pipe inside the wall, a neighbor's television low enough to become more like weather than sound. Below the balcony, a delivery bike passed, then another car, then a pause long enough for the street to seem farther away. He stayed near the counter. The blanket had warmed slightly under his hand, or maybe his hand had simply learned its texture. The fold he had smoothed was still visible, a soft ridge crossing the fabric where it had been bent too long. He looked at it without needing it to disappear. That felt different from most of the day. At the shop, he was always noticing what needed to be corrected. A price tag turned wrong. A box opened from the side instead of the top. A shelf with one item leaning too far forward. A customer's face changing because he had not understood the question quickly enough. Small things became signals. Small things became work. Here, the uneven fold could remain uneven. He let his fingers rest near it, not fixing, not starting over, only feeling the quiet weight of cloth beneath the skin. The fabric had a faint smell of the living room, of warm air and people sitting close, maybe a little detergent from the last wash. It carried the house in a way no one would notice unless the night had slowed them down. He noticed. Across the room, the old furniture held its light. A cabinet, scratched at the edge. A chair tucked near it. Wood that had followed the family through more than one apartment, more than one careful decision about what could be kept and what had to wait. In the day, it looked plain. At night, with light touching the side of it, it looked almost patient. He had brought many things into this life by choosing not to replace them. Not because he loved everything old, because there were years when keeping was how the family survived. Keeping a table with one weak leg. Keeping a winter coat past its best season. Keeping a phone with a cracked corner because it still rang. Keeping a shop open through slow weeks, through rent increases, through mornings when he unlocked the door and wondered who would come. He did not say these things out loud. Some histories become folded into the way a person moves. They show up in how carefully he wraps leftovers, how he checks a light switch twice, how he saves a box that might be useful later. They show up in his hands before they become sentences. Tonight, those hands were simply tired. He turned one palm upward and saw the faint lines pressed into the skin from carrying boxes, from holding the steering wheel, from gripping the edge of the counter at the shop when the phone rang again. The hands did not look heroic. They looked like hands that had been needed. That was all. For once, he did not ask them to do more. The folded blanket stayed in reach. The old furniture stayed in light. The city stayed below him, still moving, still speaking in pieces he did not have to answer. A pause can be kind when it does not ask for a reason. He stood there inside that kindness for a little while, between the balcony and the kitchen, between work and sleep, between what had been carried and what could finally be placed down without a word. There was a time when he would have called this kind of pause laziness. Not out loud, maybe. But somewhere inside, where older voices still kept their chairs, rest had always needed a reason. Rest had to come after everything was done. Rest had to be earned cleanly, with no mess left behind, no unfinished paper, no light left on in the wrong room. But life rarely ended that neatly. Even now, one cabinet door stood slightly open. A corner of mail sat by the toaster. The sink was not empty. Tomorrow would ask for him early, the way tomorrow always did, without apologizing. Still, he did not move. The blanket stayed beneath his hand, and the old furniture across the room continued to hold the soft light. He watched how the light did not cover the whole piece. It only touched one side, leaving the rest in shadow, as if the room understood that nothing needed to be fully seen at once. That thought loosened something in him. All day, he had been visible in pieces. The shop owner. The father. The husband. The man with an accent. The person who knew where everything was, who could find the right screw size, the right replacement part, the right shelf label, the right answer when someone came in impatient and already half turned toward leaving. People often thought knowing was easy when they only saw the answer. They did not see the small strain of being ready all the time. They did not see him reading a customer's face before the words were finished. They did not see the quick counting in his head, the memory of suppliers, the habit of checking whether a joke was friendly or not. They did not see the quiet way he swallowed irritation because rent was due and kindness was sometimes a business expense no one wrote down. At home, he was visible differently. Someone needed the blanket. Someone needed the car tomorrow. Someone had left a note on the counter because they trusted he would see it. Someone had asked, earlier, if he remembered to bring home batteries, and he had nodded before taking off his shoes. He did remember. They were still in the paper bag by the door. He almost went to put them away, but his hand remained on the fabric. The old reflex passed through him and then softened. Not everything had to be carried to its proper place immediately. Not every loose end had to be gathered before he was allowed to stand still. The house could hold one paper bag by the door. The counter could hold one blanket. The night could hold one man who was not ready to become useful again. Outside, another sound rose from the street, then lowered. A car door closed. Somewhere below, two people laughed briefly and walked on. The city did not become gentle, exactly. It only moved farther away when he stopped listening for what it wanted. He looked down at his hands again. There was a small rough place near his thumb, dry from cardboard and soap and cold air from the shop's back room. He rubbed it once against the blanket, feeling the difference between skin and fabric. One worn by work. One worn by being used for comfort. Both still here. That was the kind of gratitude he could bear tonight. Not bright. Not spoken. Not the kind that asked him to be glad for every difficult thing. Only the relief of one slow task ending without applause. Only the softness of folded fabric under a tired hand. Only the old furniture accepting light without needing to look new. He breathed in. The room did not ask him to explain why that helped. The longer he stood there, the less the blanket seemed separate from the rest of the room. It belonged to the counter now, to the soft rectangle of light, to the old furniture across from him, to the sounds below the balcony that kept arriving and leaving. It belonged to the hour when people had stopped asking things from one another because sleep was beginning to cover the house. He had always trusted objects more than speeches. Objects did not rush him. A blanket could hold warmth without explaining where it came from. A counter could hold crumbs, mail, and a tired elbow without keeping score. An old cabinet could carry scratches for years without turning them into a complaint. Even the light seemed to know how to arrive quietly, touching one surface at a time. He thought of the shop again, though he did not want to. Not the whole day. Only the small moment near closing, when he had stood behind the counter with one hand on the receipt printer, waiting for it to finish its thin, dry sound. The customer had already walked out. The door had swung closed. For a moment, the shop smelled of cardboard, floor cleaner, and the faint metal scent of keys in his hand. He had looked around at the shelves then. Everything in its place, or close enough. A few things crooked. A few labels needing attention. A light buzzing near the back. The kind of order that was never complete, only carried forward. That was how he had built most of his life. Close enough to keep going. Close enough to open again tomorrow. When he first started, he had thought success might feel different. Maybe brighter. Maybe like standing in a place where no one could question whether he belonged. Maybe like a day when his body finally stopped preparing for difficulty. But years passed, and success became quieter than that. It became rent paid before the envelope felt too heavy. It became a supplier who learned his name. It became a customer who returned without looking surprised. It became a light left on in the front window because the shop was still there, still small, still part of the street. At home, success was even smaller. The batteries remembered. The blanket folded. The door locked. The people he loved sleeping under the same roof, even if the day had not been perfect, even if someone had been short with someone else, even if no one had said thank you in a way that sounded large enough for all that had been done. He did not need large tonight. Large things often asked too much from him. The blanket gave him something small enough to receive. Its folded edge. Its familiar weight. The worn corner under his thumb. The little line of shadow where one layer rested over another. He smoothed it again, slower than before. This time, the movement did not feel like finishing a chore. It felt like touching the day at one place where it could still be softened. Not the whole day. Not the difficult customer. Not the bills, or the old ache of being misunderstood, or the quiet fear that effort might never fully catch up with need. Only this one fold. Only this small place. That was the mercy of ordinary things. They did not ask to become symbols. They did not ask a person to rise above the life that had worn him down. They only waited close by, offering one piece of the world that could be met with the hand. Below the balcony, traffic moved through a green light. The sound spread, then thinned. Somewhere in the building, water ran through the pipes and stopped. The house settled again, a little deeper this time. He looked at the old furniture in the quiet. The light had shifted lower along its side. The scratches were still there. The dull place on the wood was still dull. But the room had made peace with it for the evening, and because the room had made peace, he could almost believe he did not have to argue with his own worn places either. Not tonight. He left his hand resting on the blanket. There was relief in doing one task slowly, and not turning it into anything more. Later, after the last room finally went quiet, he carried the folded blanket from the kitchen counter toward the chair by the balcony. He did not do it because it needed to be moved. He did it the way a person sometimes carries one small thing when the body is not ready to go to bed yet. The blanket rested over his forearm, heavier than it looked, warm in the middle from where his hand had been. He crossed the room slowly, careful not to let the edge brush the floor. The balcony door was still open a little. Cooler air came through the gap, bringing the city with it. Not the whole city. Only its softened leftovers, tires on damp pavement, an engine waiting at the light, someone calling goodnight from the sidewalk below. Farther away, a siren moved through another street, too distant now to enter the room fully. He stood near the balcony and looked back. From there, the kitchen counter seemed smaller. The soft rectangle of light still rested where the blanket had been, now empty, as if the counter was holding the shape of what had just left. Across the room, the old furniture sat in its dim place, the light lower now, almost sliding off the wood. The house had changed without becoming different. A few minutes ago, the blanket had been the center of the room. Now it was folded over his arm, and the room kept breathing anyway. That seemed to comfort him in a way he could not have explained. Some things could be moved. Some things could remain. The old cabinet with its scratches. The paper bag by the door. The cup near the sink. The batteries he still had not put away. The people sleeping behind closed doors, needing him less for this one small hour than they would in the morning. He stepped onto the balcony. The city sound rose around him, but it did not feel as sharp as it had earlier. Maybe because he was above it. Maybe because the rooms behind him were quiet enough to give the sound somewhere to land. He rested the blanket over the back of the chair and placed one hand on it, smoothing the top fold again without looking down. Below, a car turned at the corner. Its headlights passed across the side of a building, then disappeared. For a moment, the light reminded him of the light on the old furniture inside. Different light, different surface, but the same brief mercy of something worn being touched gently and then left alone. He had spent so much of his life trying not to need that mercy. Trying to be clear. Trying to be ready, trying to be the person who could open the shop, answer the phone, help the customer, remember the batteries, unlock the front door, move through the house softly, and still have enough left to be kind. And he had been kind, many times. Not perfectly. Not every hour. But more often than he gave himself credit for. In the ordinary way, by staying, by providing, by lowering his voice, by fixing what he could fix and leaving the rest for morning when there was no more strength. The blanket under his hand did not praise him. That was part of its kindness. It only stayed there, folded, useful, quiet. It allowed his tiredness to be ordinary. It allowed the evening to remain unfinished without becoming a failure. It allowed his hands, rough from cardboard and soap, to touch something soft without needing to deserve it first. Inside, the old furniture waited in the lowered light. He could see it through the balcony door now, partly framed by the room, partly hidden in shadow. The scratches were still present. The dull top was still dull. Nothing had been restored. Nothing had been transformed. But the room had softened around it. He breathed out slowly. At 8:23, the day had still been asking to leave. Now it was almost gone. Not completely. A day like this never leaves all at once. It loosens. It thins. It lets go of the hands last. He kept his palm on the folded blanket and listened while the city moved below, while the house stayed behind him, while no one asked him to explain what this pause was for. He stayed on the balcony for a little longer, with one hand on the folded blanket and the other resting against the cool rail. The city kept going beneath him. A bus sighed at the corner. A car rolled past with music low enough to become only a pulse. Somewhere, a door closed and the sound lifted between the buildings, then disappeared. Behind him, the house held its quiet. Not perfect quiet. The refrigerator still hummed. The walls still settled. The old piece of furniture still stood in the lowered light, scratched and useful, not asking to be anything else. He looked at it through the open door and felt, faintly, the relief of not having to become new before he could rest. The day had been long. There were things unfinished. The paper bag was still by the door. The cup was still near the sink. Morning would find them, and morning would bring its own asking. But this was not morning. This was only the small hour after everyone had gone to bed, when the air touched his face and the blanket stayed warm beneath his hand. This was the pause that did not need his story. It did not ask him to defend his tiredness, or prove his gratitude, or explain why one fold of fabric could make the room feel kinder. He let his hand rest there. Below, the city moved on. Inside, the old furniture held the last soft piece of light. And for a moment, nothing needed to be answered.